Ramon Air Base, southern Israel, 8:30 p.m., March 16, 2026. 4 F-35I Adir stealth fighters sat on the tarmac with their engines already running. The aircraft belonged to the Israeli Air Force's 69th Squadron, known as the Hammers of God, the most elite strike unit in the Israeli military. These were not standard American F-35A Lightning Dassaults. The Adir was Israel's heavily modified variant, upgraded with Israeli-developed electronic warfare suites, domestically produced avionics, and weapons integration for Israeli munitions, including the Python 5 air-to-air missile and Rafael's Spice precision-guided bomb. The modifications included extended-range internal fuel tanks that gave the Adir the ability to reach targets deep inside Iran without aerial refueling. Tonight, that capability would be put to its ultimate test. Each F-35I carried a specific weapons loadout in its internal weapons bays. The two strike aircraft, call signs Hammer 1 and Hammer 2, each carried 3 GBU-39 small-diameter bombs in their internal bays. If you stand with the American Armed Forces, subscribe to Sonic's Darks and never miss a battle. The GBU-39 was a 250-pound precision-guided munition with GPS and inertial navigation guidance capable of striking within 1 meter of its programmed coordinates. Its relatively small warhead was designed for exactly this type of mission, destroying a specific building in a dense urban environment while limiting damage to adjacent structures. The two electronic warfare support aircraft, call signs Shield 1 and Shield 2, carried the Israeli-developed electronic warfare pod systems in their weapons bays, along with 2 Python 5 air-to-air missiles each for self-defense. The target was a residential compound in the Lavasan district on Tehran's eastern outskirts, 1,600 kilometers from Ramon Air Base. Inside that compound, Israeli intelligence had confirmed with 90% confidence was Ali Larijani, the Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council and the de facto leader of the Islamic Republic since Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei had been killed in the opening strikes of the war on February 28th. The man who had authorized every Iranian missile strike against Israel for the past 3 weeks was sitting in a living room 1,600 kilometers away, and 4 stealth fighters were about to close that distance. At 8:35 p.m., the 4 F-35Is taxied to the runway in pairs and launched in rapid succession. The aircraft climbed to 40,000 feet and turned northeast on a heading of 042 degrees. They crossed the Israeli coastline over Haifa and entered a pre-cleared corridor through Jordanian airspace. The Jordanian government had agreed to allow Israeli overflights for the duration of the conflict. The 4 stealth fighters crossed Jordan in 18 minutes at Mach 0.9. Their radar-absorbent skin and angular airframe making them virtually invisible to any radar system below. Over western Iraq, the formation descended to 30,000 feet, and the 2 Shield aircraft activated their electronic warfare systems. The Israeli-developed jamming pods began broadcasting interference across the specific frequencies used by Iran's surviving air defense radar network. 3 weeks of American and Israeli strikes had destroyed the majority of Iran's integrated air defense system, but some mobile SA-15 and Buk M2 surface-to-air missile systems remained operational, moving positions nightly to avoid targeting. The Shield aircraft's jamming ensured that even these surviving systems would see nothing but noise on their screens. The flight plan exploited the mountainous terrain of western Iran. The 4 F-35Is entered Iranian airspace through a gap in radar coverage between 2 known mobile air defense positions. They flew southeast along the spine of the Zagros Mountains, using the 12,000-foot peaks as a natural barrier against low-altitude radar detection. Iranian air defense operators monitoring their degraded radar systems reported nothing unusual. The combination of the F-35I's stealth characteristics, the electronic warfare jamming, and the terrain masking made the 4 aircraft completely invisible as they penetrated 600 miles into Iranian territory. The navigation through Iran required precise timing and routing. The formation passed south of Isfahan at 9:45 p.m., maintaining 30,000 feet altitude and complete radio silence. Communication between the aircraft was conducted through encrypted directional data links that could not be intercepted by Iranian signals intelligence. At 10:15 p.m., the formation turned northeast toward Tehran, beginning the final approach phase. The pilots could see the glow of Tehran's lights on the northern horizon, a city of 9 million people, many of them unaware that 4 stealth fighters were approaching from the darkness. At 10:45 p.m., 120 miles southwest of Tehran, the formation split. Shield 1 and Shield 2 took up an orbit pattern at 35,000 feet. Their electronic warfare systems now focused on jamming Iranian air defense radars around the Tehran metropolitan area. The two Shield aircraft would remain in this orbit throughout the strike, providing a protective electronic umbrella under which the strike aircraft would operate. They also monitored Iranian Air Force communications for any indication that interceptors were being scrambled from nearby air bases. The Iranian Air Force, devastated by weeks of strikes, had only a handful of operational fighters remaining. None were airborne tonight. Hammer 1 and Hammer 2 descended to 25,000 feet and activated their AN/AAQ-40 electro-optical targeting system pods. The EOTS, integrated into the F-35I's fuselage beneath the nose, provided infrared imagery that could identify individual vehicles and people from 25,000 feet. The pilots switched their helmet-mounted displays to targeting mode, each pilot now seeing a high-resolution infrared view of the ground below projected directly onto their visor. Tehran's eastern suburbs filled their displays, a dense urban landscape of apartment blocks, villas, and walled residential compounds. At 11:30 p.m., Hammer 1's targeting system locked onto the Lavasan compound. The infrared image showed a walled residential complex matching the satellite photographs exactly. If you stand with the American Armed Forces, subscribe to Sonic's Darks and never miss a battle. 3 vehicles were parked inside the compound walls, including the government sedan that had been tracked by satellite surveillance. Thermal signatures showed approximately 15 individuals inside the main building, consistent with Larijani's known security detail. 2 security personnel were visible on the compound's roof, their body heat clearly distinguishable in the infrared image. The compound's gate was guarded by 2 additional security personnel. Every detail matched the intelligence assessment. Hammer 1's pilot confirmed target identification to the mission commander through the encrypted satellite link. The confirmation was relayed to the Mossad Operations Center in Tel Aviv, where analysts were monitoring the strike in real time through a satellite downlink from one of the Shield aircraft. The final authorization traveled from the Prime Minister's military secretary through the chain of command in under 30 seconds. Execute. At precisely 11:52 p.m., Hammer 1 opened its internal weapons bay doors. The bay doors, designed with sawtooth edges to maintain the aircraft's stealth profile even when open, exposed 3 GBU-39 small-diameter bombs. The weapons released in a 1.5-second sequence, each bomb dropping free before its guidance fins deployed and its GPS receiver locked onto the satellite navigation signal. 2 seconds later, Hammer 2 released its 3 bombs. 6 precision-guided weapons were now falling through the night sky toward the compound 25,000 feet below. The GBU-39s fell for 47 seconds. During the descent, each bomb's onboard guidance system made continuous corrections, steering toward its specific impact point with 1-meter accuracy. The first bomb was targeted at the main building's roof, directly above the living area where Larijani was assessed to be located. The second targeted the eastern wing containing the communications equipment. The third struck the western wing. Bombs 4, 5, and 6 from Hammer 2 targeted the security quarters, the vehicle garage, and the compound's perimeter wall. The first bomb struck at 11:52 and 47 seconds p.m. The 250-pound warhead penetrated the roof of the main building and detonated inside the second floor, collapsing the structure downward into the ground floor. The second bomb hit the eastern wing 0.3 seconds later, destroying the secure communications equipment and the staff working in the adjacent rooms. The third bomb struck the western wing at 0.6 seconds. The fourth bomb obliterated the security quarters where 12 bodyguards were stationed. The fifth destroyed the vehicle garage and the government sedan inside it. The sixth collapsed a section of the compound wall, sealing off the compound from the surrounding neighborhood. The entire strike sequence lasted 4 seconds from first impact to last. 6 precision munitions destroyed every structure within the compound walls. The compound was reduced to a crater surrounded by concrete rubble. The thermal image on Hammer 1's targeting display showed the compound's heat signature collapsing from a cluster of warm buildings to a single mass of superheated debris. No movement was visible in the rubble. The strike was complete. 18 people were killed in the strike. Ali Larijani died instantly in the main building. His son Morteza, visiting his father that evening, was killed beside him. The head of Larijani's personal office, Alireza Bayat, was killed in the eastern wing. 15 security and military personnel were killed in the security quarters and perimeter positions. No one inside the compound survived. Adjacent residential buildings suffered shattered windows and superficial debris damage, but no structural damage. No civilian casualties occurred outside the compound. Simultaneously, at 11:52 p.m., a separate Israeli strike package targeted a second location in Tehran. Gholam Reza Soleimani, the commander of Iran's Basij paramilitary militia, had been tracked to a makeshift tent compound on the outskirts of the city. The Basij leadership had abandoned their headquarters weeks earlier, setting up mobile tent camps that they relocated every few days to avoid Israeli targeting. Israeli drone surveillance had located the current campsite 2 days prior. 4 additional precision munitions struck the tent compound at the same moment the Larijani strike landed. The tent structures, designed to avoid detection, offered zero protection against precision-guided bombs. The first bomb struck the main command tent where Soleimani was meeting with his deputy, Sayyid Qureshi. The blast destroyed the tent and killed everyone inside. Additional bombs struck the adjacent tents housing communications equipment and senior Basij officers. Soleimani, Qureshi, and the majority of the senior Basij leadership were killed in the simultaneous strike. The 4 F-35Is from the Larijani strike egressed Iranian airspace along a southern route. They descended to 20,000 feet and accelerated to Mach 1.2, racing south across Iran toward the Persian Gulf. The electronic warfare support from Shield 1 and Shield 2 continued to mask their withdrawal. Not a single Iranian radar detected the aircraft during the egress. The 4 fighters crossed into Gulf Cooperation Council airspace over the Persian Gulf and turned west toward Israel. They landed safely at Ramon Air Base at 3:15 a.m. on March 17th, completing a 6-hour, 45-minute round-trip mission deep into the heart of Iran. If you stand with the American Armed Forces, subscribe to Sonic Starks and never miss a battle. Every aircraft returned without damage. Not a single Iranian air defense system had fired. The strike demonstrated the extraordinary capability of the F-35I Adir in a real-world deep strike mission. 4 stealth aircraft had penetrated 2,600 kilometers into enemy airspace, navigated through mountainous terrain, delivered precision munitions onto a specific building in a dense urban environment, and returned safely without detection. The mission validated years of Israeli investment in stealth technology, electronic warfare, and precision-guided munitions. It also proved that the F-35I's extended range modifications allowed deep strikes into Iran without aerial refueling, a capability that no other F-35 operator had demonstrated. Iran's response came within hours. The IRGC Aerospace Force commander declared a rapid strike in retaliation for the assassination. At approximately 3:00 a.m. on March 18th, Iran launched what it described as its most intense missile barrage of the entire war. Over 60 ballistic missiles were fired toward central Israel, including medium-range Shahab-3 and longer-range Khorramshahr missiles. The IRGC claimed its missiles struck more than 100 military and security targets in the heart of Israeli territory. Israel's multi-layered air defense system activated immediately. Arrow-3 exo-atmospheric interceptors engaged the highest altitude incoming missiles, destroying 12 Khorramshahr warheads above the atmosphere before they began their terminal descent. Arrow-2 interceptors engaged an additional 18 missiles during their mid-course phase, detonating them at altitudes between 30 and 50 kilometers. David's Sling medium-range interceptors targeted missiles that penetrated the Arrow screens, destroying 15 more. Iron Dome batteries in the Tel Aviv and central Israel area engaged the lowest altitude threats, intercepting another 8 missiles in their final seconds of flight. Despite the layered defense, the sheer volume of the barrage overwhelmed the interception systems at several points. 3 Iranian ballistic missiles impacted in populated areas. 1 missile struck a residential building in Ramat, a suburb east of Tel Aviv, killing a couple in their 70s. The building's upper floors collapsed from the impact, trapping residents in rubble. Israeli rescue teams worked through the night to extract survivors. 2 additional missiles struck near the coastal city of Ashdod and the southern city of Beersheba, causing injuries but no fatalities. A total of 23 Israelis were injured across the barrage, with the 2 fatalities in Ramat Gan. The Iranian barrage also employed a new tactic. Several missiles carried cluster munitions, dispensing hundreds of smaller sub-munitions over a wide area during their terminal phase. This was the first confirmed use of cluster warheads in Iran's ballistic missile arsenal. The sub-munitions were designed to overwhelm point defense systems and cause casualties over a wider area than a single warhead. Iron Dome batteries engaged the cluster-dispensing missiles, but some sub-munitions reached the ground, causing additional injuries and property damage across central Israel. Israeli air defense systems performed remarkably under the heaviest barrage of the war. Of the approximately 60 incoming ballistic missiles, 53 were intercepted by the layered defense system, an interception rate of approximately 88%. The 7 missiles that penetrated the defense caused the 2 civilian deaths, 23 injuries, and significant property damage in 3 cities. Israeli military analysts assess that without the air defense system, the barrage would have caused hundreds of casualties. The morning of March 17th brought the global impact. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz confirmed the killings at a press conference, announcing that Ali Larijani and Gholam Reza Soleimani had been eliminated in overnight operations. Prime Minister Netanyahu released a video statement calling Larijani the boss of the regime and addressing the Iranian people directly, telling them that Israel was undermining the regime in the hope of giving them the opportunity to get rid of it. In Tehran, the confirmation of Larijani's death triggered the largest public gathering since the war began. Hundreds of thousands of Iranians filled the streets for the funeral procession. Larijani's flag-draped coffin was carried on a military vehicle through Tehran's main boulevards, surrounded by Revolutionary Guard commanders. The IRGC commander vowed publicly that the blood of Larijani would be avenged and that Netanyahu himself would be hunted and killed. Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei led the funeral prayers and declared Larijani a martyr of the highest order. The air defense battle continued through March 18th as Iran launched follow-up missile salvos throughout the day. Israeli Arrow, David Sling, and Iron Dome batteries fired 147 interceptors over a 24-hour period, the highest single-day expenditure since the system was deployed. Israeli Air Force F-35Is and F-15Is were scrambled to provide additional defense, using their advanced radars to cue ground-based interceptors onto incoming threats. 2 Iranian missiles that evaded ground-based defenses were destroyed by F-15I fighters firing stunner interceptors in a first-of-its-kind airborne intercept of ballistic missiles. The operational impact of the Larijani assassination was immediate. Iranian missile strikes against Israel continued but became less coordinated and less strategically targeted. Without Larijani's centralized command, individual IRGC commanders launched attacks based on standing orders rather than a unified military strategy. The missile salvos that had been precisely timed and targeted under Larijani's direction became scattered and less effective. Israeli air defense interception rates improved from 88% to over 94% as Iranian targeting quality degraded. The Israeli Air Force's 69th Squadron mission to Tehran entered military aviation history as one of the most significant precision strike operations ever conducted. 4 F-35I stealth fighters had flown a 3,200-kilometer round trip deep into enemy territory. They had penetrated one of the most heavily defended airspaces in the Middle East without detection. They had delivered 6 precision munitions that killed a head of state in his hiding place. They had landed safely without a single aircraft sustaining damage or a single pilot suffering injury. The entire strike, from weapons release to target destruction, lasted 4 seconds. The operation that had taken weeks of intelligence gathering, days of planning, and hours of flight was decided in the time it takes to draw a breath. If you stand with the American Armed Forces, subscribe to Sonic Starks and never miss a battle.